to travel to Vietnam or Thailand? If you're traveling to Southeast Asia, you might have had this question for a little while, or you might just want to know the differences between the two countries, the pros and cons, and which one is right for you. I've been to both countries several times. I've traveled the length of Vietnam, stopping in some of the bigger cities, the smaller towns, and even some of the national parks. I've also been to Thailand several times, and in my latest stint, I was living there for 5 months. So I'm pretty well traveled in both countries, and although there's definitely some similarities, there's also a few differences as well. So this video should help you choose the best one for you based on your trip and help you get the most out of your next visit to Southeast Asia. The first big difference for me when I went was the beaches. And I expected Vietnam to be this tropical paradise, very similar to Thailand and very similar to what you might expect from places like Bali and the Philippines. But if you are looking for a beach holiday or an island hopping kind of trip, undoubtedly Thailand is going to be the place for you. Now there's plenty of reasons why you might choose Vietnam, and I'll get to them later, but if beaches and the island type of life and that tropical paradise that a lot of people associate with Thailand is what you're after, Thailand will be the place for you, undoubtedly. Although you have got the island Phu Quoc in the south of Vietnam, the beaches and tropical style islands that you might expect are going to be much more abundant in Thailand, and you're going to be spoiled for choice. So if that's what you're after, Thailand gets your pick. Madness. The next one is the weather. Both countries have nice weather for a good chunk of the year, but Vietnam is definitely going to be cooler in places, especially at certain different periods of the year. Now there's a lot of different climates in Vietnam, so I'm not going to sit here and list off all of them, and I haven't experienced all of them. But before you go, the best thing to do is actually check where you're going at what time of year. Down in the south is hot and humid almost year round, and then up in the north it can get cool at times and you might even need a jacket. Thailand, you have two main weather seasons. You have dry and wet. The dry season stretches from December through to about April, although you're going to get dry patches for much longer than that. That's the actual dry season. And then the wet season stretches from May all the way through to November. You will still get nice weather and hot weather in Thailand during that period, but it's just going to be more likely to rain, and rain is a lot more common in those months. The last time I was in Thailand in April, which is technically meant to be the start of the wet season, it was actually dry all month and didn't rain once. Even into May, it was still very dry, very sunny. If you go far up north, it might be a little bit different, but for most places, people are going to spend a good chunk of time. It's going to be them distinct seasons. When it comes to the cost, I would say Vietnam probably has to win it. And even though it's close, things like accommodation, food, drink are just a little bit cheaper in Vietnam. One thing that's pretty similar in cost is transport, but I felt a little bit safer in Thailand than what I did in Vietnam. Vietnam's a little bit like a free-for-all when you get on a scooter, when you get in a bus, when you get in a taxi. Even though Thailand isn't much better, it's a little bit better. And you'll notice if you go to both, Thailand just feels that little bit more safer. The roads feel a little bit more organized. Now, one thing that is very cheap. Last time I went to Vietnam, I was there for 2 weeks, and I said to myself I wouldn't drink. Every single day bar one, I drank. Beer is about 30p for decent local cold beer in a restaurant, so it's cheaper than water. When you're sat in there and you see the sign and it's advertising how cheap it is, it's hard to turn your nose up at it. In Thailand, you're going to pay similar costs for alcohol as what you might expect in Europe. It's going to be cheaper than the UK, cheaper than Australia, cheaper than America, but it's not as cheap as what you might expect. And if you're going out into clubs and bars, you're probably going to pay £2 to £3 or $3 to $4 for a beer. Whereas in Thailand, the cheapest beer I have ever had was 14 UK pence. That is about 20 cents for a beer from draft. Mental. Now, if you're traveling to either country, getting around and transport is going to be quite an important part. Both are pretty easy to get around, but Vietnam has to take this as well. You've got sleeper buses, you've got night trains. It's super easy to catch internal flights, as it is in Thailand as well. but it just feels like the whole country is set up for backpackers. You can go into towns and they'll have transfers that you can pay a little bit extra and get private taxis, or they'll just have transfers that you can hop on a bus, sleep overnight to your next destination, or you can hop on a train and literally go the whole length of the country and have a cabin with a little bunk bed in.
Jesus Christ. Gotta go steady over here, keep your wits about you. People come from every direction at all times. Oh my God. This guy is a fucking lunatic.
As I said earlier, I did feel safer in Thailand on the roads with other people behind the wheel or handling the bike, but Vietnam just feels like it's got a little bit the edge for getting around. Thailand's super simple as well. You'll probably use apps like Bolt and Grab to get around, and it makes life a lot easier, but you've got tuk-tuks, bike taxis, normal taxis, minibuses, you've got all of that. It just isn't quite as easy to get around the country if you're going further afield. Whereas in Vietnam, you do have the buses, you have the trains that go in very regularly. Food and drink, both are nice. Thailand wins. Thai food is famous worldwide for a reason. You've got spice, flavors, variety, meat, veggie options. It's probably my favorite cuisine. Both have street food options, both have restaurant options, but all around the country of Thailand, street food plays such a massive role, and it's set up for locals and tourists in places too, so it's easy to grab food on the go. It's always tasty. The quality is pretty much always good. The one thing to just watch out for is just make sure you're choosing places that seem like they're mostly hygienic. The standards are going to be a little bit different to what we've got back home in Europe or in the Western kind of world, but still be a little bit mindful and execute a bit of common sense, because if you get sick, which I have been, it's not very nice. And in terms of drinks, I said it earlier, alcohol, the price, they are very, very far apart in terms of cost for alcohol. You're going to get much, much more for your money in Vietnam. In terms of smoothies is much better in Thailand. They seem to be everywhere. Fresh fruit, put in a drink, they're amazing. You've got the fresh coconuts, can get them in Vietnam as well, but they're just much more readily available in Thailand. Let's talk about the people. People are friendly in both countries. They're amazing. Vietnamese are amazing. The Thais are amazing. You can't fault either of them. I used to think that Vietnamese were a lot more friendly, I'll just be honest, but after having spent more time since I originally thought that in both countries, they're both amazing people. Both very hospitable, welcoming, and want to help you out. One thing to bear in mind is a lot of the time we can be viewed as very wealthy, and in context we are a lot wealthier than the locals in Vietnam and Thailand, generally speaking. Because of that, if we're going into tourist areas, people might be trying to make a living from tourism. So don't be surprised if people are trying to make money from you. Don't take offense to it. Just realize that's them going about their day job in the same way that we would go about our day job. Keep your wits about you, because they're in anywhere where there is tourism and there is people that are foreign to the country, people will try and take advantage of you. But as long as you use your common sense and realize that some people genuinely are trying to help you and some people aren't, then you'll be absolutely fine, and most of the time you'll probably feel very looked after in both countries. The style of accommodation in each country is similar, but I would say for value for money you're going to get better in Vietnam than what you will in Thailand. Also in Vietnam, the hostels are nicer than what they are in Thailand, and they're not a bad cost. Even though you're going to be sharing a dorm with other people, they generally are a nice, clean standard, and a lot of people are there backpacking through the country, similar to what you might be doing if you stay in hostels. Hotels also are very affordable in Vietnam, and they're nice, and if you book ahead, you will get good deals. Places are affordable in Thailand, but you do get less value for money, and you might need to pay a little bit more, particularly if you're in the touristy hotspots. I would suggest, if you're trying to get a good deal on accommodation and save money, booking well ahead in advance in Thailand is always a cost-effective way. The last thing, and it's something I'm not usually interested in, but it's history. Vietnam actually sparked a little bit of interest in history for me after the first time I went there. The place is so rich in history, from the French colonizing Vietnam for nearly 100 years, then the Vietnam War, the divide between the North and the South, everything that went in, and the confusion and the politics that went into the Vietnam War. It just is all fascinating. What the people have been through and what the whole country has been through just shows how resilient they are, how tough people the Vietnamese actually are. And when you meet them and they are so friendly, it's crazy to think all of the things the previous generations have actually been through. Even if you're not into history, go and learn a little bit, go to a museum or two, go to the tunnels or something like that in Ho Chi Minh, or go to Hue, which is one of the main cities in central Vietnam, and just take in some of the history, take a day out. I can't compare Vietnamese history to Thai because I don't have a Scooby about Thai history.
So to summarise, if I was going to do the pros and cons, Thailand would take the beaches, the island, the tropical paradise. Number 2 is the weather. I like hot weather, so Thailand would take that as well. If we were looking at cost, Vietnam is just that little bit cheaper, and then travelling around Vietnam is a little bit easier to get around. Food and drink goes to Thailand. Next, we've got the people, both take that. And finally, we've got the history, which goes to Vietnam.
So that is Vietnam versus Thailand. If I was looking for sunshine, islands, clear water, and island hopping, tropical kind of vibes, I would go for Thailand. If I was looking for history, cheap beer, and just to go backpacking place to place, I would probably look at Vietnam. Both have their pros and cons, both are amazing places. You're gonna feel a little bit more like you've got some modern ways of life in Thailand, and you're gonna feel a bit like you've taken a snap back from the past in Vietnam. Take your pick, go to both if you can, split it in two, or go on 2 separate trips. Both are amazing places. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please drop a like, comment, or subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.